Okay, holding space. This is one of my all time favorite topics to talk about. It's the beginning of self care, it's the beginning of connecting to yourself in an intimate, ongoing way. So, um, let's just break it down. Holding space, there can be a million different terms for this. Call it whatever you want. I don't really care. But the concept is this is the time and place, like the quiet that we take for ourselves to dig a little bit deeper and allow ourselves to our feelings and those emotions to fully present, and we're not shutting them down. We're not trying to put on a happy face or be something that we're not, or get into a better emotion or whatever. We're just showing up. Usually for me it's in my room by myself, and I'm just resting with my hand on my heart and my stomach and breathing. Getting into my breath is the first step, and then accessing whatever my big emotion is that I'm feeling. So if it's grief or rejection or abandonment, whatever I'm feeling, I will just begin to feel it in my body, and then I'll name. I really feel that pounding in my chest, or there's a burning in my gut, or a twisting, or I feel it very tense in my shoulders, wherever it is. So that's how you can start to acknowledge the feeling and name it, give words to it, and identify it in the body, right? And then the next step when you hold space is to, the whole point of holding space is we're moving from our head to our heart. So we're moving from thinking and rationalizing and intellectualizing. This is why I'm feeling this way. This is where it came from. This is how I'm going to get out of it. Okay. And we're literally just letting it move through our body completely and feel the feeling. We're not coaching it along the way. Like, this is why you feel that way. And your parents didn't mean to reject you when you were 5. That's just what was happening because they were on the phone and running a business. And you happened to need a snack at that time. And they turned around and snapped at you. And that, like, no, that's all intellectualizing, right? That's all rationalizing. We're turning off the mind and we're just letting ourselves feel what that 5-year-old felt, or whatever age you were at. So sometimes you feel it the first time you had the feeling. Sometimes it's the last time, like what triggered you most recently and brought you into your room or your space to hold space. It doesn't really matter. Some people say that it does matter. I don't think that it matters. What matters is that you're naming the feeling and that you're allowing your body to feel it and process it. And so you just sit, and it's very uncomfortable. We are trained to not feel the feelings. When we have a negative feeling, aka anger, sadness, grief, whatever, disgust, betrayal, all of that, it's like, ooh, how do I get out of this really quickly? That's not what you do when you hold space. When you hold space, you sit with it. You allow it to be here, exactly how it is presenting. You welcome it and say, you don't have to go anywhere. Tell me what's up. Show me. Show me what you're wanting me to know. Because again, feelings are data. All feelings are. They're data. Anger is data about what matters to you, where your value system is. And excitement tells you what makes you feel joy and pleasure and inspiration and all of that. Sadness allows you to witness your own heart and what you treasure in life. So when these feelings come, let them have a place in your heart, and that is called space. Let them have that space, and the way you get that space is by holding it. So it takes time. You can't just all of a sudden be like, oh, let me have all the feeling. You do a little bit at a time, and over time, it's just like meditation. You practice it, and the more you do it, and the more you practice, then what you're doing is you're telling your inner child, which is the feelings part of you, the emotional and the sensitive, vulnerable side. You're saying it's okay. It's really okay, whatever feelings you have. Whenever they come, I'm going to be listening. I'm going to be paying attention to you, and I'm going to make space for you. If it's not immediately, just like I would to a child, I would say, hey, I see you. I can't talk about this right now, but I want to come back here as soon as I can. Okay? And that's how you talk to your inner self, aka the triggered you or the reactive you, whatever. You say, I'm feeling some feelings, and I'm right in the middle of a work meeting, but you know what? I'm going to make a little note on my phone because this is important, and I'm going to pay attention to this just as soon as I get 5-10 minutes to go and hold space. And then you go and do it, okay? So when you're holding space, I've talked about, you get into your breath, you start feeling and naming it in your body, you let that feeling move through you while you just sit, and it's pretty uncomfortable. And there will come a reprieve. There will come where you really do find your breath again. You're like, oh, there's a little release, okay? When that release comes, that's when you can come in with the truth and the validation. I understand why you felt rejected by that comment. I understand why you felt very alone. It reminded me of this one time when I was a kid, or my husband said this, or whatever it is. So you can think about the first time you felt that feeling. That's kind of an important step in closing the loop on the feeling and the holding of the space. And you can think about the last time you felt that feeling, other than today and right now, whenever you're holding space. And then after you validate and say, yeah, that makes sense. Like this has happened before. So you saw that and you know how that feels. And so you had a reaction of like, this is a threat. Let's get out of here, whatever, fight, flight, or freeze. And then this is such a critical part. They're all critical steps. They really are in holding space. But to close the loop on allowing this emotion to move all the way through you, you have to reparent. You have to come full circle and show up for yourself in a committed way differently than you have in the past. Okay? So, for instance, when I self-abandoned a lot for the first 30 years of my life, it would always remind me of when I felt very alone and abandoned as a child. And there's like particular instances where I was like crying in the closet. And this is not to villainize my parents in any way, because it really doesn't have anything to do with them. And it has everything to do with my experience of the world. So that was it. I had a feeling of abandonment. We all do at some point, right? And what happens is when other people treat me a certain way or say something similar, or I feel like I'm not seen anymore or whatever, I have that same reaction of like, all I want to do is go and cry by myself because I'm not seen, I'm not heard, I'm not known. And it really triggers that self-abandonment, right? So then when I go and hold space and I let that feeling, I welcome that feeling, and I say, you know what, it's okay. It's okay to feel that way. Bring it on. You know, where do I feel it most? I feel it in my gut, and then I feel it in my back, you know. As that feeling moves through, then I validate, and I was like, it makes sense, you know, from childhood. I know these markers of different people, different experiences, different incidents where that same abandonment wound came up. So now this is how I would reparent that, okay? I would come in and I say, Here's what I haven't done before. I haven't made space for you. When you have that feeling when somebody doesn't look at you or doesn't pay attention or reach out or whatever, and that triggers you, I haven't paid attention to that. I've rationalized it away. I've told you everything's fine, they're just whatever, and I make excuses for that, and I basically deny your existence and pretend you're not important. So I'm not going to do that anymore. Here's what I'm going to do now. I have new tools. So I'm going to practice using those tools. I'm going to hold space, and if I can't hold space, I'm going to make a commitment to do it later. And in that, I'm going to just pay attention to what my need is there. What's the deeper need that the abandonment is calling out or bringing to the surface? Okay? And so I've done this so much, specifically with self-abandonment and just a total abandonment wound, that I know, like the back of my hand now, my need is to be heard and to be seen and known. So what I do with my close friends is I say, before I even get vulnerable or before I'm even in a space where I need to present a piece of my heart or whatever, something important to me, I say, hey, this matters to me. Is this a good time for you to, just listen or give me undivided attention or whatever? And I kind of set that tone. I just set myself up for success, to be listened to be paid attention to, whatever, instead of just throwing out my emotions and being like, that's so weird that didn't land. How come they weren't paying attention? Well, because they were in the middle of cooking or who knows what, whatever. So now I know how to create a different environment in order to protect myself better and take care of myself. So that's creating security for my inner child, right? So I'm coming in as the parent now, the adult version of me, and I'm saying, you know what? I could do this differently. I could do this better. Now that I know what my trigger is, I can come in and make some commitments because I can dig deeper and figure out what my need is. And then once I figure out what my need is, I can set boundaries for myself and for others so that this is a much safer place for me to operate in. And this, meaning the world and my body, me in the world. Okay, so I went over that pretty quickly. There's so much more there that we can talk about. This is a lot of what I do with my clients. It's absolutely vitally important to your self well-being, to your self-care, to your ability to connect and have a relationship with yourself. This right here is the biggest gift you will ever give yourself. So please ask questions. Please reach out if something didn't make sense or you need more clarification or want to talk about something specific. Let's talk about it. Okay?